Hello, friends. Welcome to Above the Line episode 2. You guys came and showed up in droves last week. Well, okay, droves is maybe a little bit excessive, but you guys showed up for last week's episode. You rewatched it, you watched it later, people watched the replay. Basically, what I'm trying to say is thank you and welcome to week 2. So we've got some fun stories for you today. I'm going to give it a second to let people jump in the chat. Apologies for being a few moments late. I had an idea at the last moment, and I was like, let me just see if I can implement this. So we've got it up and running, and it should make it a little bit more fun this week, visually more fun. So let's see who we've got in the chat. I see that Alex and 123 Rock Fan are here. Alex, happy Super Bowl Sunday. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to all of you. Please leave in the chat who you are rooting for this Super Bowl. To be honest, I don't really have a horse in the race this year for the Super Bowl. I'm a Dallas Cowboys girl, as some of you know, and they didn't make it. So, and neither did the team that kicked them out of the playoffs, the 49ers. So, I guess that leaves me either rooting for the Eagles, which are their division rivals, or the Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes is injured, so I feel like it's going to be an Eagles game, but we'll see. Anyways, what trailer am I most hoping to play or hoping to see during the Super Bowl? To be honest, and I've been saying this, the timing is right for a Loki trailer, season 2 trailer. That's what I'm most excited for because there's been sneak previews at D23. There's been a few spots, Disney spots for 2023 that have a few little like references to it, and that is what I think I'm most excited for. Yeah. That's what I'm hoping they do the most because I think that would be the most fun. Also, sorry if I'm not perfectly centered here. Today, with the new thing, we're adjusting the setup slightly. I'm trying to make sure I didn't leave anything. I always try to remember to clean my background before we film, so there's a bunch of stuff on the floor. That's the thing. This looks so polished and nice, but the floor is a catastrophe around me. But yeah. 123 Rock Fan, thank you for stopping in the chat. I hope you're doing well as well. And Alex is rooting for Kansas City. So there's our little Super Bowl timing. And we've moved this week's episode of Above the Line slightly up so that I can get y'all on your way to go get your pizza and your wings before the game. But our first story today, if y'all are ready, is a follow-up story, which I really did not think a follow-up would be so soon for this specific story. And that, my friends, is that... Let me adjust where I'm sitting a little bit. And that is the fact that Bob Iger, during this week's Disney's Q1 earnings call that was going on, there was a lot of news that came out of that. That's our biggest news of the week, and we're going to open because not only is this a follow-up story from my opening story of last week, so it's only fitting, but there's just a lot of news coming out of Disney that I think you would be interested in, I'm interested in, I think we should talk about. So, first on the docket, Disney is not selling ESPN. Bob Iger came out this week and basically said that this idea of ESPN being spinned off into kind of make money or to trade it in some type of way was an option that was explored in his absence. So he kind of threw a little shade at Bob Chapek there. Just a little bit, just enough to be like, I mean, he didn't call him out by name, but we all know what he was talking about. And he boasted that ESPN's dominance in the sports world is something that can't be ignored, and as a reason the company is kind of splitting off into 3 segments, which I sort of alluded to last week, and I feel like Disney has been clear that it's this way for a while, but this week it was officially said that Disney is splitting into 3 categories. So there's the entertainment category, which includes everything from like Disney Junior cable channels to Star Wars to Marvel to FX on Hulu, etc., etc. So that's your entertainment side. Then we have our sports/ESPN. That's our second area of Disney. And our third is, of course, the park. So that's a pretty clear delineation. The one thing that does make me slightly nervous about that concept is, and this doesn't necessarily apply to the ESPN side of things, but having your entire entertainment from animation, Pixar, Disney animation, to Marvel and Star Wars and all of these big brands under 1/3 of your category of your company makes me a tiny bit nervous. Now, they're not saying that like 33% of money and focus is in this area, and like they're not evenly split. Money and financials is not split evenly across the 3, nor is like their company focus, but that's just the way to look at the company. Again, an interesting way that Disney is moving forward, but I thought this was really interesting and clear. Bob Iger putting his foot down and saying, like, this is not something, these rumors need to stop. I am the man in charge now. And basically what I say goes. So Disney not selling ESPN is our first follow-up story of this. And yeah, to go on, Bob Iger basically just doubled down that he believes that ESPN is far and above other sports networks and that it's a stronghold, but he did concede that the one area that ESPN and the sports area of the Disney brand needs to focus on is monetizing ESPN. Because of course there's ESPN Plus and then there's the ESPN cable channel, but they're spending a lot of money, as we talked about last week, on making sure that, you know, they have exclusivity deals for Monday Night Football and making sure that they have talent, Peyton and Eli Manning associated with that to make sure that people are, you know, tuning in and paying attention. So just an interesting kind of follow-up that I thought I'd give you because I really thought that this ESPN story was kind of going to go a lot of the year without being mentioned again. And yet, here we are. Also, please let me know if there's any sort of issue with the audio. It looks kind of weird to me on my readings, but I feel like it's the same that it was last week. So if it's too high, too low, you guys feel free to let me know in the chat. But that's our kickoff story of the week. Let's see what people had to say about it. Alex is saying that there is a report that Bob Iger will fire or has fired 7,000 employees. Now, layoffs is pretty prevalent in the entertainment industry right now. Entertainment costs a lot of money. All these intellectual property franchises cost a lot of money. And I think it's kind of being, I don't want to say exposed. That's definitely the wrong term for this. But it's being brought to light how much leaner a company can be. Now, of course, this is not something I say. I'm talking about this from a purely business standpoint and where, like, Disney may not be different from a lot of other entertainment companies, but it's obviously horrible if you're the person that's getting the layoff. If you're the person that's facing the cut. That's horrible, but this is one way that Disney is going to continue their intellectual property franchises, that being Marvel, Star Wars, etc. Continue to have the money to create that at the standard and quality that it's been at thus far, to pay for talent, which, like, Taika Waititi, when he first got brought on, like, I'm not going to say he was a nobody, but he definitely wasn't at the same level that he is now of, like, now he's a celebrity. People who don't even necessarily know him from the film world know who Taika Waititi is. He's known. And so now we've gotten to that point where talent is costing them more money, especially in these connected universes where people pop back up. They need to show up again. Things where Pedro Pascal is, like, the biggest guy ever right now, and you have an entire series that relies on him, and then other portions of that franchise, Boba Fett, that need him to sustain themselves. So yeah, layoffs is definitely a big area, or a big thing that's going to come up in this if we're not selling arms of the company to, like, make up portions of the money that way. Thank you for those who are putting on the audio. But Roger asks, how profitable are Disney parks? And I don't actually know the answer to this, but I'd also love to know what sector of the company a majority of these layoffs are coming from, because I feel like it's probably not parks, because you need so many employees to run that worldwide. Like, you think about how many employees are at Disney World, and then think about Disneyland and Disneyland Paris and Disneyland Shanghai and Disneyland Tokyo. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of employees. But let's see, how profitable are Disney parks? Because I don't actually know. So Disney parks, fiscal year of 2022 had a record staggering $28.7 billion in revenue. So huge, right? That's a lot of money. that's not a cheap chunk of change, if you'll excuse the alliteration. The parks make Disney a huge amount of money. The one thing is, like, even though these are maybe the three sectors of Disney that they're kind of announcing things to the public about, there's obviously merchandise, which is, I would go to argue, if that's not under parks, or you're not just even talking about parks merchandise, merchandising, video games, like there's a lot of, actually, more and more I think about this story, there's a lot more to Disney than they're simplifying in this earnings call and how they're talking about the company. Because like, unless you're going to tell me that merchandise falls under parks and entertainment contains video games as well, things like Disney Dreamlight Valley or Disney Magic Kingdoms, both games that I'm a fan of, as we know, there's a lot of ads on Disney Magic Kingdom. There's always a reason for them to ask for more money from you to buy things in that game. A lot of games that Disney is known for having are pay-to-play type games. So something to think about. We could get announcements more on the Star Wars films probably this year or next year. I'm sure this year, I know D23 will not be happening this year because I want to say it's every 2 or 4 years, something like that. But I definitely think that, especially with Bob Iger coming in, that is why I wanted to talk about this earnings call, because it's something that is obviously going to affect the financial view or the way people look at Disney as a financial business. Sorry, I need to put my hair up. It's really bothering me. But yeah, I definitely could see us around Investors Day, which is usually in December. I could see a lot of information at that time coming out. Now I don't like my hair. Okay, well, that just shows that I'm watching myself and how I look in my little viewfinder here. But anyways, doesn't matter. Long story short is, yes, I think we're going to have to get more announcements from Disney as to the future of their slates, because I do feel like D23, everything that was sort of talked about last year at D23, with the exception of like Daredevil and that sort of thing, we did, like, I don't know that there was a ton of new stuff. Like D23 kind of showcased stuff that had already been announced. So again, more food for thought. Unfortunately, I wish I had more inside knowledge or was studying this more closely to like give an expert opinion or theory as to what's going to happen here, but I'm not sure. Do you think Iger coming back is a mistake, or will he be able to bring things back on track? Well, my next story gives me a little bit less hope, so I'll save that kind of the sequels and announcements as to what Disney is kind of up to concerns me. I thought Iger coming back was the best choice. Like, you could just tell in the court of public opinion that Bob Chapek was not the guy. He was not the guy. The cuts and changes that he made in the parks specifically, I don't think that those were all great choices. However, Bob Chapek was only CEO for 2 years? Like, it wasn't a long time, even though it was like years. And in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a long time. And Iger was beforehand. And so I have to believe, kind of the same way when Steve Jobs passed away and Tim Cook became the active CEO of Apple, he had like a 5-year plan. So for the first several years of Tim Cook being CEO of Apple, those plans were not necessarily Tim Cook's plans. They were him following Steve Jobs' plans. I have to believe in some areas, now not the parks, because Bob Chapek was in charge of the parks prior to becoming CEO. I do feel like he's probably going to take most of the blame for things that have happened over the last couple years, and Chapek or Iger will kind of dodge that by the court of public opinion not being a fan of Bob Chapek. However, I think you bring up a really interesting question, because Bob Iger was him stepping into being CEO of Disney now when he's almost having to course correct some certain things that have happened. I mean, not to be like super, super meta here, but to talk about like the sequel trilogy of Star Wars films. The first film was J.J. Abrams, then you had Rian Johnson come in and kind of change up things. Then you bring Rian Johnson back in the third movie, which a lot of people don't necessarily like because you're having to kind of overcompensate and course correct. And that's what I think our next story is about. So maybe it's time to just skip to that. And yes, Jennifer, you're so right. There's so much always to talk about Disney, but specifically right now. So let me switch my little slideshow over. And this is our next story. So this is one, we're going to go in deep here. This is probably going to be the majority of this stream because this is eating me up inside, to say the least. And that is the mass announcement of sequels for Zootopia 2, Frozen 3, and Toy Story 5. these are the things that make me a little or a lot nervous that Iger might not be exactly the saving grace to Disney that we really hoped him coming back as CEO would be. So again, that Q1's earning call, it's got me concerned. It's really got me concerned, and here's why. So last week in this kind of same section when I was talking about ESPN, I praised Iger's ability to kind of franchise Disney and grow the brands under the Disney umbrella, kind of to be the peak brands possible, like to launch Disney Plus, to have The Mandalorian revive Star Wars. If you can think about it, 2019 was a whole different landscape for Star Wars than what we have now. Completely different. But these sequels really had me worried that the company, again, in a coordination with those layoffs, that there's maybe not enough checks and balances within this company or enough quality control to ensure that the things that are getting greenlit and approved are actually worth the company's time, just because they see, it feels like there's a focus on the dollar signs, which obviously you're a company, you have employees, you cannot necessarily just be like, we're just going to create the best movie possible and not care if it makes money or not. Not the way to do it. However, I feel, listen, I have to admit my hypocrisy here, because usually I am the person, 9 times out of 10, I'm the person who's trying to be like, don't let this new thing ruin your love of the original. Like with the announcement of Daredevil, a lot of people are nervous because it's going to be a Disney Plus show. A lot of people didn't like Daredevil coming back in She-Hulk, and I was the person being like, do not let this ruin the original series. Still exists. You can pretend the new stuff doesn't exist. Like with Solo, the Star Wars stories, I pretend that was never made. I pretend I ignore it. I ignore its existence, and I still love the character of Han Solo. That's the reason I don't like that movie, is a story for a different time. But basically, I'm just usually a proponent of don't let some new thing ruin the original for you. But I'm having a really hard time with that, specifically in case of Toy Story 5. Zootopia 2, you know, it's a world, it's about animals. The first movie is funny and explores a lot of segments. I know there was I believe it's been released, a couple like shorts about different areas of the Zootopia world launched specifically for Disney Plus. So I'm game for a second Zootopia movie. Great, sure. Least bothersome of all of them. Frozen 3, I'm questioning it because you have a really nice duology there where you talk about the two sisters, and one has like a really, like, I just feel like those films, the second one outdid the original, had better songs. It was great. Maybe let's not continue that. But okay, again, I love Anna and Elsa. I love Kristoff. I like Sven. I even like Olaf as much as he can sometimes annoy me. Sure. Let's get a third Frozen. But Toy Story 5. Guys, I'm wearing my Toy Story shirt right here. I can't remember if this is something I vocally talked about on the channel that much, or if this is just a personal thing that lives in my head, but I pretend that Toy Story 4 doesn't exist. Like, talking about that, like, reality distortion of a certain property, I pretend that Toy Story 4 was never made. Even now, a couple years after it's been released, I can kind of see, okay, this is the end of Woody's story. Okay, like, not... There's some developments in animation that I really appreciate for Toy Story 4. Like, it's a stunning film. But I don't really like the story. I don't really like the continuation of it. And even Lightyear, I was sort of like, I don't know that this is really what anybody wanted or asked for, but like, sure, let it exist. Let it exist for a new generation. Let bring them into Toy Story in this new way. Sell your additional Buzz Lightyears. Do what you want to do. Great. I even like the concept of like, this is the movie that Andy saw that made him want a Buzz toy. Like, meta, talk about a Disney movie about toys, producing real life toys, and then making a Disney movie of, you get my drift. You get my drift, right? But now with this, I have always loved Pixar. I've always been like, Pixar is the greatest animation studio. Their quality, their stories, the visuals of their films. But with this move, it makes no logical sense to me why you need to make a Toy Story 5. Who is even going to be in this movie? Is Woody going to come in this movie? Because then, does it even make sense for him to leave Buzz and the entire crew to go be with Bo Peep? Doesn't make any sense. Does not make sense to me. The fourth movie was an unnecessary conclusion to an already concluded trilogy. And now when you're telling me you're going to make a fifth movie off of it, not just, oh, hey, like 9 years after the third movie, we had this really great idea that we felt ended Woody's story better. Now you're going to go and make this fifth film. It's for nothing other than dollar signs. I feel like none of the original Toy Story creators at this point, or writers of the film, directors of it, are really involved with this. Again, I haven't done too much reading. I don't know what exactly has been announced. I know it's just been announced. And it makes me really disappointed because I was really not happy with the announcement of Inside Out 2. I love Inside Out. That's one of my favorite Pixar movies ever. And when Inside Out 2 was announced by Amy Poehler at D23 this year, I didn't talk about it because I really just didn't want to. I didn't understand why that story needed to be continued. But this Toy Story 5, the only thing I will give it is if for some reason Toy Story 5 is like randomly about toys from another child, right? Like it's not about my original cast and crew of the characters, but as some of you are pointing out in the chat, Tim Allen has already talked about coming back to star as Buzz Lightyear. I'm not for this. I'm very, very against this. And Pixar just hasn't had a track record with sequels. I don't think Incredibles 2 was good. I personally did not think, one, it wasn't necessary, and two, they hype it up by saying, like, we've waited so long, and yes, animated movies take a long time. So I understand that I don't want to, like, crap on Toy Story 5 before it's even, like, we have any idea of what it's about, because people are going to put years of their lives, years away from their families, from their children, days and weeks and tireless nights, focusing on making this film the best that it can be. And so I don't want to out the gate be like, I'm not even going to see that, but it's frustrating to me because it feels like a corporate entity of Disney, which I, for my whole life, have tried to give Disney the benefit of the doubt. Yes, it's a mega corporation. It makes money. Of course, at some points, they're going to be after money rather than fairy tale dreams and everything that Walt Disney stood for, basically. Of course, that's going to happen. It's not surprising. I'm not that naive. However, I thought that the people kind of in charge of Toy Story 4, or the Toy Story franchise, Pixar specifically, I kind of gave them a benefit of the doubt beyond everybody else in this type of industry. And this move, to me, is showing that they don't. Specifically with Toy Story 5. And, like, again, am I being sort of like, I grew up with the Toy Story films. I remember going at 10 years old to go see the third one and being like, this is the end and this is a perfect ending and this is, like, growing up is sad and scary but also, like, beautiful and there's new beginnings in that. And then this fourth one was, like, whatever to me. And now you're telling me there's a fifth one? I can't. I cannot. To me, Toy Story has been a long dead, and I don't mean dead as, like, tired over, but, like, there was a natural conclusion to that story. And now you're trying to tell me that there's more to the story. And the other thing is, like, you can explore, and Pixar did explore, other areas of the Toy Story world in a great way. There were two short films, and there was an ABC or ABC Family, like, original kind of telecast. It's called, like, that one is the Toys of Terror. It's the Halloween special. And then there's Partysaurus Rex and Small Fry, which are two of my favorite Pixar shorts ever. Ever. Of the Toy Story characters, once they live with Bonnie, kind of going on different, like, mini self-contained adventures. Oh, there's Hawaiian Vacation, which is another great one. Like, do that. Make those. Make a Disney Plus TV show that's, like, a year in Bonnie's life, and, like, crank out for that dollar sign, like, an episode of Woody and Buzz at Christmas, an episode of Jessie and Buzz at Valentine's Day. Like, do that, but I don't understand why making a full-length feature makes sense. And at the end of the day, what makes sense? Making money. And that's, I think, I'm getting heated, but I just think that Disney has had so much dominance in the entertainment industry for quality, for people knowing they can go watch these movies that tell good stories, that have high quality animation, that push the boundaries of what that technology can do, that marry that technology with the story. And again, like, I keep saying Disney here, but there is Pixar, which is its own company within Disney that is responsible for Toy Story, always has been, and I feel like I trusted them more than even just the Disney umbrella, and now I feel let down by that as a fan. Again, I'm an adult now. So, like, the people who go see Toy Story 5 are probably going to be people slightly older than me with their children. And I don't want to, like, again, crap on a new generation's introduction to this franchise that has been so beloved in my life. And I should be able to just say, I don't need to see the new one, or I don't need to care if it's good. Like, it doesn't need to ruin my view of the original. But when you keep going after this same franchise and you're not doing it in a smart or intelligent way to, like, make a meta commentary, and these are the things that I've loved Disney for. Like, I absolutely adored the fact that Free Guy was this movie that just poked fun at these massive corporations and had meta moments in there with, you know, Chris Evans' little cameo and the reference to the Captain America shield and the lightsabers and stuff, because it's a Disney thing. Like, do cool, fun stuff like that surprises fans. But to me, there's just so many great alternatives for telling stories. And when you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, with new characters so you can sell new toys, I just feel super cynical about it. And maybe this isn't a new story, and maybe this was just a little rant of mine, but it's been on my mind. And I just feel like the most disappointing part of all is that if we keep moving in this direction, or we as an audience allow Disney to continue to basically just make sequels. Also, I don't know that I spelled it correctly on here. I don't even know sequelization is a word. I think it's correct, but Canva doesn't necessarily correct you when you spell things wrong, so ignore that, please. But I feel like if there were other regularly great animated movies of a certain quality, standard, and caliber that were coming out, this wouldn't be an issue. But to me, Disney is just taking the easy way out by being the top dog and not really caring if what they're making is something that audiences want. And just a little asterisk on this, they're making a short for Disney Plus where Carl from Up, the man whose entire movie it is known for having a 10-minute sequence that makes everyone cry with no words about a man and his wife, and this is about him going on his first date after his wife has died. Who told you we wanted this, Disney? Because you clearly don't care about the fans. You clearly, there's such a thing as bad ideas or good ideas that shouldn't necessarily come to light. That was not needed. That is my opinion on it. So let me take a sip of water after that heated rant. Apologies, because y'all just came here to get the news and I'm giving you the too long didn't read version of my freaking brain since I read this announcement. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Jennifer says, no way about the Up short. I'm not even kidding. Go Google it. It was the one thing that I responded to on Twitter. I don't go on Twitter that often because I really just think Twitter is sometimes it's just not great. I don't think it's great for anyone's mental health to be on Twitter a lot. That's my opinion. People just get so angry on Twitter, and because of the format of Twitter, it's just, I don't feel like it's as creative of a platform as other social media. However, yes, I replied to this. Again, me adding to the negativity. I'm part of the problem. I'm not saying that Disney is the only problem here. I'm part of the negative problem on Twitter as well. But, yeah, I don't understand, who's watching that first movie and being like, you know what we really need? We need to spend time making a sequel, short, where he goes on a date. Now, part of me is, hopeful that they're going to get people up in arms about this, and then it's going to be, he's going on a date to Ellie's grave. Or he's going, or he's, taking Russell's mom, because I think it's sort of implied that he has a single mom, taking her somewhere, for, him and Russell are taking Russell's mom somewhere to have, to say thank you for being a good mom. But why is it necessary? The Doug Days shorts. Great. Fun. Everyone loves Doug. Use the side characters, right? Use Forky and make those little, Disney Plus shorts, but don't make whole narrative additions to stories that feel over. They're done. Just stop, please. See, 123 Rock Fan, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. But 123 Rock Fan says focusing on Sid in Toy Story 5 would be perfect. See, these are angles that if the new Toy Story 5 is not another Buzz and Woody adventure, I could be down for. And this isn't coming from you see this shirt. Y'all know this is not the only Toy Story short I own as a 23-year-old woman, okay? You guys know I love this. I love these characters so much. But unless you're going to tell me that this brand new sequel that you've announced is taking a wildly different, interesting approach to this world, it's just reheated. I don't know. Like, and yes, I feel like a bad person saying this because people spent time writing that first movie. People spent time acting for that first movie. People spent time creating concept art and animating and rendering and all of this stuff for that movie. Like, I, as a huge animation fan, know the feat that takes, okay? And there's certain aspects of that movie that, like, blew my mind. The split diopter camera within a computer that was you created a split diopter lens to create that effect in a film that's animated, completely exists within a computer. Like, it's not, no physical aspect of that movie exists. Like, it's all completely pixels. That's incredible. But I just don't want to see another Woody and Buzz story. And again, I'm cynical. I'm a grown woman. Maybe I'm not really the person that should be voicing my opinion on this. But, Roger also says, I'm definitely concerned that they are going for a cash grab instead of new, better content. Like, where is the Toy Story for a new generation? Like, people don't want to be creative. They'd rather take, and again, this is sort of like, we exist in a world where, like, fan fiction is pretty mainstream now, or fan fiction can kind of become a legitimized thing. Like, I'm a huge fan of the book The Love Hypothesis, which started as a Raylo fanfiction online. It is a best-selling novel, I'm pretty sure now. It was a TikTok phenomenon, and it came from a fanfiction. So, like, I get that that can be a starting place for a creative idea, is, like, building off of existing media. However, it just feels tired. It feels tired. Okay, sorry. Let me catch up to the chat, and then we'll move on, because I need to calm down. Alex said, I saw that Tim Allen has agreed to portray Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 5. Without Woody and Buzz, it won't be the same. I mean, again, I agree, but I feel like it's like y'all had the one last run again. Yes, see, Roger, like, Lightyear, for as much as maybe it's not my favorite thing, it takes a new approach to these characters. That's, I guess, what I want to see. In all of this ranting, a solution I can offer is that I would love to see a unique, creative take on the Toy Story world or universe, or the things that are meta within that universe, like Lightyear, the movie that he saw to get Buzz. Like, I'm interested in that, but I'm not interested in just, like, da-da-da-da. A lot of you are saying that you loved Toy Story 4, you loved Incredibles. They're just, again, it's just a personal opinion. I'm not correct. You're not incorrect. Like, it's just a thought. I mean, 1-2-3 Rock Band also has a great idea. They're just plastic toys. They could literally set the movie 100 years in the future, and now they're antique toys set in a science fiction setting. Cool, but at that point, why don't you make it 2 new toys that can become new concepts that you could build a trilogy off of? Like, that's, I guess, where I'm saying is, if you're going to make it so much different than the original, again, and I probably just sound like a hypocrite now, because I'm like, well, you have to keep it somewhat to the original, but, like, you shouldn't do that at all. So, not what I'm trying to say. Would it be better if Toy Story 5 didn't include Woody or Buzz? In my opinion, yeah. Like, it does not need to be these 2 characters going on like I said, if it's Toy Story and it's, I don't know, say we jump 15 years and Bonnie has gone to college and her toys got passed to somebody else, but, like, Woody, Buzz, and Jessie aren't around anymore. Like, what? I guess I just get tired of the same characters being used over and over and over again. Like, know when something is good and know when it's a good place to end it, and let's not revive stuff anymore, I guess I feel like. And again, I keep just thinking about ways I'm going to consider myself a hypocrite, because some people might have said that about Spider-Man, but, like, I guess I just feel like I need to be sold a little bit more before I'm excited about Toy Story 4. That's where we should probably leave it. Alex hits the nail on the head here, I think. They greenlight sequels because they want money. If I was Bob Iger, I would not greenlight Toy Story 5 and instead make Moana 2 instead. See, like, there's other things, like I said, with Zootopia. Like, I'm less intrigued, or I'm more intrigued with the Zootopia thing because we don't really have a sequel of that yet. But Toy Story, we have 3 sequels. 3 sequels to the original. Okay, listen. I'm being told by my producer / fiance that I'm ranting a little bit. So let's move on to some more exciting news, okay? More exciting. So this week, or last Sunday, a week ago today exactly, was the Grammys. And we have a 17th EGOT winner, and her name is Viola Davis. Crazy, because I definitely knew that getting an EGOT was hard, but I did not realize how few people actually have an EGOT. Which, if you are unfamiliar, an EGOT is an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. Basically winning the top award or top prize in like the 4 categories of entertainment. Tony is for Broadway, Oscars is of course for movies, an Emmy is the highest you can get for television, and then a Grammy is the highest award you can receive for any sort of music or audio thing. So Viola Davis won her Grammy last week for her recording of her audiobook Finding Me, which she wrote over the pandemic and released, I guess. The Grammy like qualification or nomination category is very interesting to me. I don't necessarily understand it, and it's a lot longer than a lot of other like awards. Their timing for what can make sense, but Viola won. She won her Grammy, and what was interesting upon looking into the story, because it's sort of a short little story here, other than just being excited for her because she's such an immense talent, and she actually has some multiples in some of her categories. So she has 2 Tonys. Her first one she won. Her Tony was her first of any of these awards that she won, and she won that in 2001. But she won a second Tony when she played when she starred in Fences on Broadway, which, if you'll remember, that is the same title that was later adapted to a film. It's her and Denzel Washington. She reprised her role from the play and won an Oscar for that, which is super exciting. She was amazing. That movie I probably would appreciate it now more than I did at the time of watching it because I was a lot younger, but she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal and the most memorable part of the movie, quite honestly. But yeah, so I haven't read Viola Davis's memoir. I haven't listened to it, but it was kind of amazing to me that she's only the 17th person in history to have won an EGOT. And sorry, I was also going to say she has 5 Emmys for her role as Annalise Keating in How to Get Away with Murder, which she's also phenomenal in. So this is super cool, and I'm interested to know if like how many, like if this is where she's at this point in her career, in 10, 15 years from now, how many multiple EGOTs potentially could Viola Davis have? Like, so she has 1, but if she were to get another Oscar and another Grammy, she'd technically be a double EGOT winner. How cool is that? She's in the likes of Jennifer Hudson, Whoopi Goldberg, Rita Moreno, and Robert Lopez, who does the music for Frozen. He and his wife, Kristen Anderson Lopez, do the music for that. So very excited for Miss Viola Davis. Amazing for her. Chat, what you got on this story? So happy for Viola Davis. She's just so phenomenal. And I love seeing that she just has so much talent across each of these areas. I actually am very interested to read her book because I feel like she would have a lot to say. And I also feel like if kind of this prestige, I don't honestly know a lot about Viola Davis's career other than like a lot of the more in my lifetime things that she's been in, like The Help, like Fences, like her role as Amanda Waller in the DC universe, which is a whole nother area that she might be able to double down on this EGOT because she will be reprising her role as Amanda Waller in, I believe it's a TV show, right guys, that we talked about the DC slate last week. So this is something that she might be able to do. And yes, Alex, thank you for re-mentioning The Woman King, which is actually coming to Netflix very soon, sometime this month. February, I was reading an article about that this morning. So I heard that she was great in The Woman King and that she was snubbed. I still have not seen it, but Roger said, are there 18 EGOT winners? I think she's 17. How many people have won an EGOT? I just Googled that before this. Oh, excuse me. It is 18. It is 18. Oh, now I feel so dumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, ignore what's on the screen. Viola Davis makes 18. Oh, I feel so dumb. Thank you, Roger, for pointing that out to me. That seems like it is the best time for us to move forward with this, since that was kind of a dumb mistake on my part. So, next up, this is a continued story that I'm going to continue to talk about because The Last of Us is just dominating television, right? I think we can all agree. Are you guys watching The Last of Us? If you're not, I highly recommend it. Now, you definitely have to have the ability to have time on your hands to watch a show that's going to consistently break your heart and make you want to cry. A little bit, but also that's going to knock your socks off. And I forgot where I was going with the story. Hold on. Let me collect myself. That 18 really messed me up, guys. That really messed me up. So The Last of Us, if you didn't know, episode 5, which would normally air tonight at 9 on HBO, is available now. So this story is already a late story, so I apologize for that. But in case you've got an hour to kill between now and the Super Bowl, or whenever you're watching this and the Super Bowl, episode 5 is available now. It was announced at the beginning of this past week that The Last of Us episode 5 would be released on Friday at 9 p.m. on HBO Max, and I think HBO On Demand or something, which I don't use. I use HBO Max, and I think a lot of people use HBO Max, so that's why I'm bringing it up here. But yeah, so they made it available on Friday, which I thought was really awesome, but they are sticking to their linear airing of the show at 9 p.m. tonight, so that will premiere opposite the Super Bowl, which is super interesting. And as it was pointed out last week, there's a, I believe the finale of the show is also supposed to be Oscar Sunday, which I'll be interested to see if they do a similar thing. Maybe it doesn't matter as much because it's like, maybe the same people who watch the Oscars aren't going to be watching, whereas like almost everybody does something for the Super Bowl. It's almost like a holiday in and of itself. So that's something. But yeah, The Last of Us is back again this week, just absolutely killing it. I let it destroy my life whenever I watch it because it's so... The quality of the show, I just cannot continue to emphasize. And this past episode, the way that they can make you care about characters who you've never met before and just rip your heart out. Like, Craig Mazin, I love you, man, but like, gosh, you hurt me personally with this show and how great you and Neil Druckmann's storytelling has been on this series and this adaptation. I cannot wait until the season wraps up and then to check out the game. Because I'm a gamer now. I like to game a little bit, started Hogwarts Legacy on last night, which was a much more happier use of my time than watching The Last of Us. But no, seriously, if you're not watching The Last of Us, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. You've got 5 episodes that you can binge now. What are you doing? Catch up before next week. But it does make me sad, though, because now when tonight I should be watching The Last of Us, it's already been 2 days since I've seen it. So now next Sunday feels even further away. Like, it'll be almost a full 10 days before I see the episode. So that's kind of sad. But to chat we go. And Brian says, hold on if I can get it, break your heart, crazy, because it's the happiest show of all time. Yes, Brian and I were talking about this earlier this week. Yes, it's totally, like, I just love the feeling of having my heart shattered by fictional characters on a TV show. I love that. There's nothing I quite honestly love more. Nothing at all. Muhammad is watching the show and playing the game. I'd be interested to know, for any of you who have played the game, what is your thought process, or what are your opinions of the show thus far? Because I am somebody who has like a little bit of knowledge about the game, but not a lot. Like, we're definitely far and beyond any aspect of the show that I really know about in the game, or any aspect. We are far enough in the show to where any of the information that I had prior to watching the show about the game, like, that's already been established within the game. So, or within the show. Oh my gosh. Ugh. So I just am really just enjoying the adaptation, and then I'm going to go through and play the game fully afterwards. And then whenever next season is, which, did you guys know that The Last of Us, the first season, was a 200-day shoot? 200 days of filming. I think that's accurate. But again, I clearly am not good with numbers in this stream, so maybe don't trust me on that. But yeah, I really love a good... I think what's interesting is watching this and the reception to this and the way that it's been done with so much care. I think it's proving that there's a good way to go about adapting video games, but it takes a lot more care than just, oh, this is a popular video game, let's cast some people that look the same and make a TV show. Like, the care, if you're not watching the after, if you watch HBO and you're not watching the after the episode, like, behind the scenes, like, director's notes, whatever you want to call that, if you're not watching that, you're missing out on a lot of really quality information and thought process about what goes into these shows. Yeah. Alex got a Joel Funko Pop from The Last of Us a couple months ago. I really would love an Ellie and Joel Funko. I would really love that. If only they'll do this the Sunday of Oscars, aka Last of Us season finale, aka my 25th birthday. Happy early birthday, Brian. That's so cool. Yeah, March is going to be... I'm already thinking about all the stuff in March that I want to talk about, or the news that I'll have for this show. By March, I'm probably just going to have like a Mandalorian segment each week or something like that. We'll see. But yeah, I hope that they do that same thing, but I just don't know if the Oscars is big enough. Or, like, obviously to us in this community online, the Oscars is huge and arguably potentially bigger than the Super Bowl. But for general audiences, like, I know a couple people who watch The Last of Us who wouldn't watch the Oscars. But who knows? Who knows? I saw on Instagram a lucky fan had a chance to meet Pedro Pascal while waiting to take the New York subway. I would love to take Pedro Pascal. I think about that sometimes, and I don't know how I would react if I ever met a celebrity that I was, like, really a fan of. Y'all tell me in the chat how you would react, but I feel like I would want to be really chill about it, but I wouldn't. I'd panic, and so then I feel like I'd just be like, I wouldn't say anything because I wouldn't want to annoy them or bother them. So, I am really liking Hogwarts Legacy. Separate, or I guess it kind of relates because of the video game. It's really good. I spent 4 hours playing it yesterday, and I'm only 3% into the game. Apparently, it's like a total sum of... It's long. Like, you can spend a long time in the game. There's also a lot of side quests. It's just really cool to be first person playing in the world of Harry Potter. Like, I really like it. I highly recommend. I know it doesn't come out for Switch until later, but I'm playing it on Xbox, and it's fun because I'm playing on a much easier mode of the game, because I suck at video games, especially combat style of video games where you're doing any sort of spell casting or whatever. Like, that side of the game, I'm not as good at. Like, I just scream. But maybe I'll play it on stream for you guys soon because I would love to. My Xbox is just in the other room currently, and I only got it yesterday, and I wanted to check it out. So, for sure, there's a lot of... Initially, I was like, oh, am I going to, like, go through the story since I'm not really, like, trying to just beat a bunch of bosses. I'm trying to kind of, make my way through the story. And there's definitely enough time that we could spend a whole stream not even actually accomplishing anything and just going through, like, Hogwarts. That's my favorite part, is just running around Hogwarts, quite honestly. And, like, it's super fun. My knowledge of the game ended right after episode 1. Got stuck on the first encounter with the clickers and gave up. See, that's the thing, is I feel like I would really love, after the show is over, to stream it, because I think it would be maybe entertaining for you guys to watch me freak out playing that game. Christian started playing it, but he's not playing, like, past where we are in the show. So, I know that the game and the show are very similar. I guess I've seen, like, mixed... There's some people who are loving everything that's happening in the show, regardless of being a fan of the game or not, and other people are not. Per PC and new gen consoles came out Friday, but for some people with PS4 like me, it comes out in April. Oh, I had no idea that it only came out on Friday. Yesterday, I knew it was coming out, and Christian was like, do you want to get this game today? And I was like, yeah, it's a rainy Saturday. Let's play this game. And so I got it yesterday. Anyways, all right. Moving on to our last story of the day, which is our box office winner of the weekend. Any guesses as to what the box office winner is before I reveal it? Let's put it this way. It beat out two James Cameron movies that are two of the best-selling movies, or highest-grossing movies, excuse me, not best, that's books. Two of the highest-grossing movies of all time. It is a threequel, so not a sequel, but a third movie. And it really stepped it up. If you know what I'm saying. It's kind of a, I don't know. Any guesses? The previous two movies have also released around this time of year. Not 80 for Brady, Roger. Not 80 for Brady. Can anyone guess it? Not 80 for Brady. Let's see. It does have, how can I put this? I don't even know if I know anymore. It made over $8 million domestically. Anyone? Francis guessed it. So did Brian. The movie of the week, the winner of our box office, Magic Mike, The Last Dance. Okay? Listen. The last two box offices, okay? Now I know it's January. I know it's slow. But I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that the last two weekends box office winners are, okay, not last week, because Knock at the Cabin technically won, but 80 for Brady and Magic Mike are proof that if you market your movie correctly, female audiences don't really care what time of year it is, if it's a good movie going time. Like, if you market your movie correctly and you make it available for the specific audience that the movie is specifically made for, they're going to show up. So Magic Mike made over $8 million domestically at the box office this weekend and has made $18 million globally. I think it was $10 million overseas, and then with the domestic $8 million. So I actually didn't know this because I initially just was like, wow, this is super smart marketing. The week before Valentine's Day, or a couple of days before Valentine's Day, release Magic Mike, okay? And listen, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but Steven Soderbergh knew what he was doing with his movies. That's all I'm going to say. He wrote an interesting story, okay? That's what I'll say. But I'm not surprised that this movie is doing well at this time of year, but I actually didn't know that this has been the strategy for the last two Magic Mike movies. And what was super interesting about Magic Mike The Last Dance is it's actually doing better than Magic Mike Extra Extra Large. Yep, I just said that on stream. It's doing better because Magic Mike The Last Dance, so Magic Mike 3, it was released on fewer screens. So it's having a smaller release because it was initially intended to be a streaming movie. So I could have seen this coming out on streaming, but it kind of, I mean, with how well it's doing in the box office and the fact that it made more than individually Titanic or Avatar Way of the Water. Titanic was re-released for its 25th anniversary this weekend, if you did not know. But I feel like, but in combination with, no, where was I going with that? So it's, Magic Mike is making approximately $5,000 per screen that it's on, which is a higher per screen average than Magic Mike 2 Extra Extra Large. So, and that movie had Sofia Vergara's husband in it, okay? So, this movie is doing well, is what I'm trying to tell you. Meanwhile, James Cameron is having his two movies battle it out for ultimately gaining the third highest grossing movie of all time spot. So Avatar Way of the Water continues to be in the box office race after its around pre-Christmas release. It's still in theaters. And this weekend, like I said before, the 25th anniversary of Titanic allowed the movie to be re-released in theaters. Or, well, not allowed. I mean, there's not rules to it, but it was re-released into theaters. And what was interesting was I saw this clip this week of James Cameron basically conducting this scientific experiment, or an experiment, I guess. I should take the word scientific out of it, where he's trying to disprove the theory, or I believed that he was trying to disprove it. I didn't watch the whole clip. I just saw kind of what they were doing and his conclusion on it. But they put 2 scientists in a pool of freezing water, and they put a door there, and they were trying to figure out if, from the circumstances of the movie, had different things played out with Jack and Rose sharing the door, with Jack swimming off, with them both being in the water, how would they survive? And there was there was at least one version of the scenario where both Jack and Rose survived. And so James Cameron, it seemed like slightly begrudgingly, admitted that yes, maybe, possibly, with the right circumstances, they both could have survived and they both could have fit on the door. So, because I think the argument was like, oh, they could both fit on the door, but one would submerge it more, so they'd both be in more water. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is, James Cameron clearly knows what he's doing box office-wise, but it's interesting to see that on a week-by-week basis, the movie that can be the best movie domestically can be something like Magic Mike, okay? In a world of, yes, it's a sequel, so to go back on what I was saying before, but I'm interested to see what the theatrical window of this movie is, because I don't think it has the longevity, obviously, of something like Avatar: Way of the Water, but I don't even think that something like Magic Mike, like anybody that really wanted to go see this movie was going to go see it this weekend, or potentially next weekend, or sometime in this upcoming week with the Valentine's Day holiday. This movie feels very much like a single ladies night out type of feel, or like girls' night away from their spouses or their boyfriends or husbands or anything like that. And so interested to see how this continues to go, but I think this is a great strategy for things that, okay, maybe traditionally you would think this is a streaming movie, but like, what does a streaming movie even mean? Like, what dictates what, like, all of the Pixar movies, Onward was kind of forced to be a Disney Plus release. Soul and Turning Red and Luca were all Disney Plus Soul releases, but those probably could have held their own in theaters, ignoring the pandemic and such. I feel like they could have potentially done that. And so I'm interested to see, like, releasing this movie in theaters to get people to talk about it and then releasing it at home, because I feel like this movie has the sort of effect which probably needs a scientific name. So I'll think about how to do this. But Magic Mike feels like the kind of movie, or like rom-coms or movies targeted to women in general, that like people who really want to see it or want to go see something in theaters and this is their best option, allow that for like 1 to 4 weeks to be in theaters, and quickly after that, when enough word of mouth, as long as your numbers aren't picking up, like assuming that they're not, then put it immediately on streaming, almost like within a week. So make it not available for a week to drive up demand, and then put it onto streaming. To me, that feels like the most natural way to get people to then be like, oh, I'm not going to go see it, I'll wait till it's on streaming, and then be like, oh, it is on streaming, but you're still relatively close to the initial release. Just my thoughts on the matter. But let's hear yours. Alex is headed out to go get his pizza. Have a great day, Alex. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Thanks for stopping by. Francis says, what's with Warner Brothers going from being selective to what goes to theaters to then just saying if it's saying to heck with this and Evil Dead, regardless of how it's doing, Magic Mike is objectively a streaming movie. No, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's something that could be a streaming movie, but I think what's interesting is seeing all these movies decide prematurely. Like, it's not like they released it in a test market and then said, oh, it did really well, we'd like to change our strategy on this. At least I didn't hear any news of that. I never knew this was even going to be a streaming movie. I had no clue. From the time I saw the trailers for this, I thought it was coming out, or I knew that it was coming out in theaters. So I don't know when that decision was made, quite honestly. That might be a follow-up for Feature Above the Line. I can look into that maybe, but I agree that Warner Brothers isn't necessarily a good example of how to manage releases. Like, Elvis felt like it was on streaming way faster than maybe a film that's now in the awards conversation potentially should have been. I really just think I honestly think this is where the industry is running kind of blind. Like, they're trying to make decisions as fast as possible with as limited information as possible, to make the most money as possible and to make the most audiences happy and tune in to watch their thing. this to me, I don't know. Like, I don't know why Warner Brothers decides to not even release streaming-wise Batgirl, but something like Magic Mike can go from being a streaming movie to, like, the winner of a weekend box office battle. I don't know. I don't know why that's the case. I don't know what is driving these people to feel like... I guess, here's another thing. Like, Batgirl might have been the reason that people signed up for HBO Max or, like, renewed their account or something. Magic Mike doesn't feel like as much of an acquisitions driver in terms of getting new subscribers, but it does seem more like a box office-y thing. So I don't know. As far as I can tell, just my observation, I don't see what's successful with this. Like, the numbers prove the initial value put on it was correct. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Like, I know if you put something on streaming and you're not getting new subscribers, which is how you get money, or people are not renewing for an additional month, you're not making any more money, whereas in the box office you are. So I don't know if maybe this is the new strategy. Maybe you release films and certain movies you simply release to try to make up some of your cost of making the movie, because let's see what the budget is on Magic Mike. Magic Mike The Last Dance budget. The budget was $45 to $49 million. Assume. This is from Wikipedia. So, okay, say 50. Let's make it an easy number. You've already made back in one weekend, globally, $20 million. So, almost a little bit less than half. But potentially around half of your budget of the film is made back. Does that then make it worth it to release it in a time when there's not a lot of competition? Like, again, the same audience for this film is not very similar to last week, Knock at the Cabin versus 80 for Brady. The same audience is not going to see Magic Mike that's going to see Avatar Way of the Water, necessarily. Like, their target audiences are not the same. They're not the same. And my assumption is just that maybe it's even you make this $18 million and you put that into now, reinvest that into your marketing campaign for its streaming. And this just seems like this extra thing. It's one of those movies that's probably rewatchable, that's probably the audience, again, for this movie, women, they're not going to necessarily care if they watch it for the first time on streaming. So I just think it's interesting to see the last 2 weeks and the patterns that the box office has taken. I'm also, I guess, not surprised. Like, I could love a movie, and if it gets re-released in theaters, I'm not going to go watch it because I don't want to spend the money on it. Like, I either own it or I'll watch it at home. I don't really want to do that. With Avatar doing better globally than domestically, does Ant-Man beat it in the domestic market? I definitely think it does. That would be my assumption for this upcoming weekend. I think Ant-Man beats Avatar, kind of keeps it dethroned domestically. I don't think globally that's going to be the case, but I definitely think domestically. I mean, Francis, here's the other thing. Like, what's performing well for a Magic Mike movie? Like, if this movie is doing better per screen than the last film, again, now that doesn't necessarily mean that it's making the same amount of money, but, and you followed up by saying your thing is when you're going up against a hitter like Ant-Man in a week or two and your safe bet as overall. But, okay, Francis, I pose this question to you. Are you going to see Magic Mike The Last Dance? Do you plan to watch it even if it's on streaming? Is that really, like, a top priority over watching Ant-Man? Because, like, for me, I'm a woman, and that's Magic Mike's not on my radar versus Ant-Man. But I would watch Magic Mike sometime later. Like, I just feel like you're looking at this from a perspective of, like, simply, like, one box office movie is going to be better. But if Magic Mike made $8 million domestically this week and could make, say, half it, and say they make $4 million next week, like, it's also Valentine's Day, okay? It's Valentine's Day this upcoming week. Like, this is a movie that's more themed around the time period than a superhero blockbuster. And like I said, it's all relative. That this movie is not performing well compared to the numbers that Avatar did its opening weekend. This isn't, like, Knock at the Cabin did $18 million last week, I believe, 15 million, I believe, last week. I'm trying to remember. It did 15 million last week in the domestic box office. So, like, great. But it's also, it's February. It's not necessarily a huge box office season. This movie can make some money, maybe not a lot of money, maybe way less than everything else in theaters. But for this week, it's the box office winner. And that's not me being like, oh, this is interesting. It literally made the most money box office domestically this week than anything else in the theater. Sorry guys, my chair is squeaking a lot. I mean, Magic Mike did win the box office, and then when it hits streaming, will do well. That's my assumption. Like, my assumption is if it's a streaming movie and you make it, like, I feel like this is a test. I feel like this is the kind of movie that a studio is doing a test on to see, hey, we have this streaming movie. If we just loosely release this and we don't really do a ton of marketing around it, put it out. Francis, you're saying if I just don't care to see it, why put it on a theatrical level? The holiday season will give it a boost. Okay, so going back to last week, I don't know if you watched last week's episode, but last week, Knock at the Cabin was the box office winner, but 80 for Brady, a movie about 80-year-olds flying to the Super Bowl, okay, again, themed around the weekend, the time period. You have a movie that's for a specific audience. That movie, older people. This movie, let's say it's even older women, because I don't even necessarily think it's young women who are dying to go see a third Magic Mike movie, okay? So say both are older audiences that don't necessarily get catered to 9 times out of 10 during the year of moviegoing. Putting it on a theatrical level, if you're not doing additional marketing on the film, you're not losing any, like, what I'm saying is, like, I'm not saying it's going to make its money back in the box office, but it's more money than it would have made if it just went straight to streaming, I think. Because as 1000 of Clips is saying, oh no, you're talking about Devotion. That movie Glenn Powell and Jonathan Majors did called Devotion. It cost 80 to 90 million, and it was really good, but Sony didn't market it, and like 3 weeks after its release, I see an ad on the NFL that it's going to be on Paramount. So I think Sony made a deal about the movie with Paramount months before it's released, and Sony can do a lot of stuff like that because they aren't in the streaming business besides having Crunchyroll. Yeah, so like, I really don't think this is they did not release Magic Mike and were like, it's going to do gangbusters in Blockbuster. It's just interesting because it looks like a test of a studio releasing a movie and just seeing what does it do? What does it do in theaters when the other films that are in theaters are not for our same audience? Because what has been proven, I think, last week and this week with movie-going audiences is if you make a situation where something feels like an event viewing, you make it to where it's a limited time only in theaters, or it's, hey, this ticket is cheaper, like with 80 for Brady, you can get people who are not your traditional, like 9 times out of 10 during the year, like they're not the people necessarily contributing to the biggest box office hits, but they're the people that could take a movie that might otherwise just be a library streaming film and make it do something monetarily at the box office. I think that's just the interesting story here. But that's our last story here. And y'all, even more than last week, my voice is tired and I ranted today. I apologize about the Toy Story 5 rant a little bit because I know I really went in on Toy Story 5. But thank you all again for joining me this week for Above the Line. I will be back again next week. I will try to announce I meant to have this scheduled way earlier in the week last week, to be quite honest with you, and I got lazy, forgot, whatever you want to call it. I didn't announce this as early as I wanted to. However, next week we'll have a time, and I might try to get a time that I can stick to, but of course, with The Last of Us being at the end of the night, and then with Super Bowl this week, I just couldn't, Anyways, point is, we'll try to come up with a more frequent time for Above the Line, or you'll at least have your announcement of when Above the Line will be happening sooner rather than later. Thank you guys again for watching. Please be sure to comment during the week if you want a story that you find interesting, because I'd love to cover stuff that is particularly interesting to y'all, my audience, and not maybe necessarily just me. So would love if you guys did that. Leave those once this kind of stream is over. Leave those stories that you want me to talk about next week so I can make that ahead of time. Thank you again, guys, for the support. This week was better than last week. I'm just loving doing this little show and talking about entertainment. I love you all. Have a wonderful Sunday. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Be safe. And I will see you next week for Above the Line episode 3. Bye, y'all.